Hello everyone, my name is Edna Njeri. I create lifestyle, wellness, and productivity content. So if any of that interests you, make sure you subscribe. So welcome to another episode of Makeup and Mindset. I really wanted to do one more before the close of the year. So in this video, we're going to be creating this look, which I was trying to do like a very holiday type of look. And we're going to be talking about what I learned this year. So there's a few lessons. I think there's like 3, 4 of them or 5 that I learned this year. And yeah, so let's get right into the video. So the inspo for this video is basically how much I've changed this year and just grown this year. I feel like when you're like, Anyway, as I was saying, I feel like I think we need a bit more of this. And that half of it went onto my lip. I think that when you're like in your early 20s, you think you really know everything. And then you get to like 24 and then a lot of unlearning begins. So I feel like this year learned a lot, changed a lot, and I wanted to share a few of the things that I learned this year, which might be obvious to some people, but I didn't know until this year. I'm gonna set my primer. So let's get into the first thing that I learned this year, and that's that it's called a mindfulness practice for a reason. To be honest with you guys, when I started meditating and like building my mindfulness practice, I expected it to be much easier than it has been. I expected that I would just have to like meditate for a few weeks, get down that practice, and then after that now I'll be able to quiet my mind at will. I'll be able to control what I think and when I think it. I've come to find that that's not it at all. My eyebrows are a bit hectic because I did them yesterday and I didn't do a very good job. What I thought mindfulness was is not what it is. And even now, like when you're meditating, it's not that you're like stopping yourself from thinking about whatever it may be. It's more like you're observing your thoughts. This year, I've really been up and down with my meditations. Like I'll be consistent for a long period of time and then I'll just not meditate for like 2-3 days, however long it may be. And then now I'll have to be rebuilding my streak again. And it gets so frustrating, I can't lie, because especially like if you take a break, when you start to come back to your practice, your mind wanders a lot more and it can get frustrating. But the fact is that I definitely see the impact of meditation and having mindfulness practices, even like really taking time to journal, taking time to be reflective. I see the impact all of those have on my life and the quality of my life. So it's something I want to stick with. It's just not as simple as I'd imagined it to be. It's definitely taking a lot of time. And things that I've also learned that have helped me throughout this is making sure that I include meditation in my schedule. Like literally making it fit into my schedule in a way that it complements the schedule. So as you guys know, I used to do, I'll put it on it's a recurrent daily task on my to-do. So every time, even as I'm arranging all the 500 things I need to do in that day, meditation is one of those things. And so I know that I have to make it a priority. Making it complement my schedule could mean, for example, I prefer to meditate in the morning right before I start my day, because you wake up and you're already thinking of the 500 things you need to do. So instead of just starting, it just gives me a moment to be like, oh, okay, I'm awake. It's a new day. Okay, let's just like breathe for a second, focus on my breath for a minute. So I prefer to meditate in the morning, but it's not realistic for me to do it in the morning every single day, dependent on a lot of factors like how much time I actually have to do my morning routine. So the fact that it's actually on my to-do means that I can move things around and incorporate it into my day. For example, yesterday I ended up meditating in the evening because I was having a lazy day, and so I was like, since I'm going to be doing a sheet mask in the evening, I can just meditate while I wait for the timer to end in my sheet mask. I love doing that actually on Sundays. It's one of my favorite Sunday evening rituals. I could have been like, oh man, I didn't meditate in the morning, so that's that. But instead I found a way to make it fit in with the rest of my schedule. So if you're struggling, try find a way to fit it into your schedule on a day-to-day basis, and then over time it becomes a bit more natural. The lesson here was that I initially imagined that all of this would be way simpler than it has turned out to be, and in case you relate, feel encouraged to stick with it and just make changes as you need to. Just do what works for you. The next lesson that I want to talk about that I've learned this year is that not everything your brain tells you is true. There's this quote that's like, you are not the voice in your head, you are the awareness of it. I'm sure it doesn't even sound anything like that. It's a quote by Eckhart Tolle and it's in A New Earth. I'll find the exact quote and put it on the screen because I know I've just butchered it. I've just said my own things there. So that's the quote. And when you think about that, it's really freeing. It's really freeing to know that you don't have to believe everything that your brain tells you. I'm way more picky about what I let myself think about myself. I think that if you want to have control over your life, you really have to prioritize controlling your mind. Our brains love to make conclusions. Like that's what they're built to do. So sometimes they can take two completely unrelated things and make a conclusion, in which case the conclusion isn't exactly accurate. For example, you can see someone succeed at something which prior to that exact moment when the other person got the accomplishment, it was never on your radar, it was never something you wanted for yourself, it wasn't a priority for you. But then you see the person accomplish this thing, and then your brain starts to tell you how much of a failure you are, but you're not, because that wasn't even something you wanted. And you see, it's instances like those where you really have to check yourself and check your brain and be like, well, you're telling me that, but is that actually true? Is that actually the case? Sometimes it is, most times it's not. If you believe every single thing that your brain tells you, you find yourself having a lot more self-deprecating thoughts. And I'm talking from experience. I've been there a lot this year, especially. And I just had to really be like, okay, it's not me saying that like I never believe anything that I think. It's more like I'm picking what I choose to believe. And if you take a moment right now and just think, what's like the main message that your brain gives you? Like on a day-to-day, what are the main things your brain tells you about yourself in particular? And then think about where those thoughts or ideas come from. You'll really psych yourself out of everything that you want for yourself. Just on your own in your head, you'll just psych yourself out of everything. A practical like tip or thing that's been helpful for me in terms of this is positive affirmations. So like writing them down, telling them to myself, just so that I'm sort of like rewiring my brain to think more positive things about myself. And then really reminding myself that I'm worthy of all the good things. Like it sounds like such an obvious thing, but sometimes you psych yourself out of things, like you get good things and you psych yourself out of them. If your friend told you they got this really nice thing, or they're experiencing this like, or they've had this accomplishment that they've been working towards, or whatever it may be, you would never to your friend be like, you don't deserve it. But sometimes to yourself you'll do that. And so it's the affirmations, it's the talking to yourself like you would as a friend, and then just trying to remind myself that I'm worthy. Be kind to yourself and try not to over-identify with your thoughts and feelings. A disappointing situation does not mean that you are destined to be a disappointment for life. Like, shit happens, it's fine. Keep going. A year ago today, for example, you probably had worries, like worries come and go. And maybe you are going through something and you're like, this is the end of the world. Like, this is it. But if I ask you what that worry was today, you probably don't remember in detail. It just felt monumental while you were going through it. A day at a time, don't over-identify with your feelings. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Moving on to the next lesson. Stick to the plan as much as you can. I mean, it goes without saying, plans change. You have to adapt, you have to adjust. Not everything goes according to plan. But for me, I found that I'm more likely to regret it when I change a plan than I am to regret sticking to what I had planned. Let me give an example or two. Usually when you're making a plan, I can't talk about money. Yeah, let's talk about money. Let's say you're in a position where at this exact moment, you don't have as much money as you would like, but you know money is coming on such a date. And so at that time, you're budgeting for this money that's coming on, like, okay, to not end up in this position again where I don't have enough money, when this money comes, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. Only X, Y, and Z. Usually at that point when you're making the plan, you're very intentional, logical. It's something you've thought through really well, sober-minded. you know why you're saying it. And when you're making the plan, you're probably prioritizing. See, like you're not gonna be like, okay, I'm going to buy these 5 different outfits, I'm going to ball out of control. Like, you're not gonna be like that. But then suddenly you get the money and you have 25 other things that you now need to do with the money. And now you feel like, if I don't do these 25 things, am I even living? I need to get these things. See, it's my money. See, I'm gonna do what I want to do with my money. That wasn't the plan. And that's how you end up finishing your money before the next time you're getting paid or whatever it may be. That's an instance of not sticking to the plan and how it affects you moving forward. Another one is when you're going out. When you're going out, usually you have a plan. You're like, okay, we're gonna do ABC. We're gonna go to these 3-4 places and then call it a night. And then you start drinking, right? And everything feels so amazing and you never want the night to end. And it's like, why would I ever go home? Like, it's only 5 a.m. We can keep going, guys. And then that's how you end up deciding to go to whoever's house. And the after party, or whatever case the bender may be, never lives up to the hype. Like, it's never worth the hype. So just stick to the plan. When you're making a plan, it's usually a very thought through thing. You usually have your reasons. You usually come to that conclusion based on some very valid points. But then now when you're in the mix of whatever you are planning for, everything just sounds like so much fun and everything sounds like a good idea, even though you had thought through all the options and decided why certain things were not a good idea. So just try to stick to the plan. You'll rarely regret sticking to the plan. Like, okay, that's been my experience. Also, things that are usually instantly gratifying, like, will feel so good in the moment, but that feel-good feeling will wear off so quickly. And then things that have a delayed gratifications, and this point, sticking to the budget, going home when you said you'd go home instead of going to the next spot. And the moment it's a bummer, you're like, damn, FOMO, I'm really missing out. And you go home and you sleep and you'll never regret sleeping. Like, you'll never be like, oh man, I should have stayed out and not slept. Things that are usually instantly gratifying, not worth it. Things that have a bit more of a delayed gratification are usually where it's at. Next lesson, self-care isn't selfish. And I mean this in the instance where self-care isn't easy, not like in the doing a sheet mask, getting good sleep type of self-care. I mean it more like in the adjusting your boundaries when you haven't had them before, saying no to plans even though you're scared people will stop inviting you type of self-care. It feels like you're doing something wrong and you're really not. Like, there's some instances where self-care, for example, like I was saying, if you're trying to change a habit and that means you're trying to adjust your boundaries, and then now you have to awkwardly communicate these new boundaries to people who are like, since when? Since now. In those instances, you have to remind yourself that self-care is not selfish and that what you're doing is good for you and it's good for everyone. I look at self-care as doing things now that future you will be thankful for. Whether that's as simple as doing a mask so that your face is hydrated, or like even unfollowing an account because you don't like how you feel when you see that content on your feed. Whatever self-care may be, future you usually is thankful for what you're doing. So that's how I look at self-care. So with that being said, the thing that I'm learning is that I don't need to apologize for choosing to do a bit more for myself. I don't need to feel guilty for that. It makes me a better person, and so in turn makes me a better friend, partner, daughter. Everyone benefits from it basically, so you don't need to feel bad for doing the hard parts of self-care. It's something I've struggled with, it's something I'm learning to do. So I say all that to say, do what you need to do, take care of you. There's nothing to feel guilty for. Something else that I want to talk about is kind of redundant because I did do a whole separate episode of this series on it. But I wanted to mention it briefly because it's just had such a significant impact on me. I need to mention it again. And what it is that self-awareness will really change every aspect of your life. The more I've gotten to know myself, which I've done a lot of this year, like I've been so reflective this year. I've done a lot of shadow work. I've evaluated a lot of different parts of my life. A lot of things which I never really took time to think of because some things usually just feel like they're a bit more obvious until you think about them and then it's like, oh, I already trimmed them, that's perfect. But yeah, I've really gotten to know myself this year. And I think that's a big part of why I've changed this year. And when I say like self-awareness will change every aspect of your life, I don't mean it will make it like any easier or like rosy. I just mean the quality of your relationship with yourself will improve, and that's a really good place to start. I just think that you are who you are because of all the experiences that you have ever gone through, right? And for every single experience that you've gone through, you're really the only one who went through it in the way that you did. Like, you're the one who knows how it impacted you. So I just think prioritize getting to know yourself. I'm really not going to go deep into it because, as I said, there's a whole other video on that. But I will say that you'd be surprised what comes up when you're like intentionally being reflective on your life. There's things that happen that you don't really pay much attention to, and then when you actually think about it, it's like, oh, okay, so that is why this is the way it is. Take some time to really pay attention to you. Think through your life, because you're really the only one who knows the honest truth about everything. So I think I want to, because we have one more thing that I wanted to talk about. So I think I'm gonna do my lashes, lip, hair off camera really quickly, and then I'll come back. We do the final lesson. I'll show you guys my makeup, and then we take one. Okay, so we're done. This is the final look. It actually kind of worked out to what I wanted. I was trying to do like a frosty eye, red lip, holiday vibe with the snowflake earrings. I think it works. I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely much better than my first attempt. So this is the final look. And then the final lesson that I've learned this year is that rest is an essential part of productivity. And when I say essential, I mean essential as in absolutely necessary, extremely important. Like, you have to make it a priority. Like, your body will force you to rest. You can keep going until you can't. Like, your body will make you rest. You will fall sick. And it's actually something that, looking back now, I see the times when I'm the most stressed, or not even stressed, the times that I'm working and I need to be working, I end up falling sick because I never prioritized rest before. And rest is an important part of productivity. It's something I've really learned this year, which is why yesterday was so much fun for me. Like, I literally didn't do anything the entire day, and I rarely do that. Even on Sundays, I'm usually like, okay, let me do my entire wash day routine and clean the entire house. Like, rest is important. Doesn't mean you're any less productive, doesn't mean anything negative. You never look back at your life and be like, damn, I wished I worked more. Like, there's so much more to live for. So don't be like me. Make sure you're prioritizing your rest. Okay, so that's it for this Makeup and Mindset, the final episode of the year. I hope you enjoyed. The second time around definitely worked. My makeup, I like how my makeup looks. Everything worked out. My hair dried. The first time I did this video, my hair didn't dry. So you know when you do bantu nuts and then your hair doesn't dry, and then you take them out and then your hair shrinks, like it was just not giving. So this is so much better. I'm happy with how it turned out. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you're subscribed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.